Many of you are looking forward to retirement and all of the free time that it brings. So, um, today I hope to be able to discuss what it really looks like and hope that you'll consider what you can do to find ways to make for an enjoyable retirement and make it a meaningful time in your life. So, with that being said, um, this is the Retirement Health and Happiness, creating your new lifestyle retirement webinar. So a couple of years ago, I actually watched a wonderful movie called The Intern. I don't know how many of you have seen that, but it's a fun movie that I thought was really interesting. Stars Anne Hathaway, Robert De Niro. And it's really about Robert De Niro's character, Ben Whitaker, who's discovered that retirement is difficult and may not be all that it's cracked up to be. So Ben, he did everything he could to stay busy. He learned Mandarin Chinese, he took yoga, he traveled, but when his wife passed away, he decided he needed a new challenge. So he takes an internship with a startup company that's Jules Austin, that's Anne Hathaway's character, and becomes kind of her right-hand man. In the opening scene of the movie, there is one line in the monologue that Robert De Niro's character shares. He says that retirement is an ongoing, relentless effort in creativity. Have you considered this in your retirement? I'm sure you've considered some things that you want to do in retirement, but like travel or maybe that honey-do list that your spouse really wants you to pay attention to. But hopefully today we'll give you some guidance on some other items to consider when you plan for retirement. As we talk about retirement, we often think about the finances that that take up a big portion of our consideration and our time in retirement. However, that's not the most important aspect of retirement. Let's look at the big picture here. The financial aspect of retirement obviously does support the other life priorities that we all have, but we need to be thinking about the most important resource that we'll have in retirement, and that we'll use every day, and that's time. A 2017 study released by AgeWave identified 7 different life priorities that we have. As you transition from work into retirement, this framework can help you understand how your finances affect nearly every area of your life. The study actually identified finances as the greatest worry of many Americans. Health is the biggest wild card. Family is the greatest source of satisfaction. Work in retirement, whether paid or volunteer, allows retirees to find purpose and contribute to their community in ways that you might feel passionate about. Giving provides retirees with an added purpose and being generous with time, experience, and money. And when it comes to leisure, retirees really value new experiences over acquiring new things as they deepen connections with family and friends through their leisure activities. So this is how you can create your retirement masterpiece. Now here's why being aware of those 7 life priorities and your upcoming free time in retirement is so important. Just think, what kind of retirement do you envision as you transition from work? What's going to make your retirement years satisfying and meaningful? Is it going to be an enjoyable retirement? Or will it be re-torment? According to a study that Nelson's Ratings performed in 2015, their cross-platform report, the 68 million retirees in the U.S. currently spend an average of 49 hours per week watching television. That's incredible. Essentially, TV has replaced the 40-hour work week in retirement. Is that how you want to spend your time? Week after week, month after month, year after year? Instead of working full time, retirees are TVing full time. So I like this quote by Ken Deichtwald. He said, ultimately, the problem may not be our growing legions of older adults. It may be our absence of imagination, creativity, and leadership regarding what to do with all of this maturity and longevity. The unprecedented historical challenge and opportunity of the age wave is how we unleash our greatest growing natural resources that are hiding in plain sight: experience, skills, and wisdom. In other words, we really need to look at how we are using our retirement time. We need to use that time wisely. Those of you in retirement and getting ready to retire have some wonderful skills, talents, experiences, and abilities to offer. Don't let them waste away in front of the television. Now, one thing you have to understand is that retirement can create a loss of purpose. We see it all the time in our office. People coming back to work because they didn't have a plan in retirement. They didn't feel like they had purpose. And they saw a lot of reduced social interaction, a loss of physical activity, and that mental stimulus that keeps people going. So you really have to be creative in making your retirement a masterpiece. Here's some thoughts as you look at your plan. The great thing is you actually get to create that masterpiece of what your retirement's going to look like. Every one of our retirement portraits or sculptures will look different. But that's because we plan our retirement. As we plan our retirement, we really should look at our own activities, our relationships, and center ourselves around our core values. Our lives need to really center around those passions and values that we really hold dear to us. In addition, each of us may have different ideas on how to live healthy lives. Some of us may be more active than others or may have other health considerations that we have to look at. But we need to really look at ways to both physically and mentally stay healthy. So as you pursue various activities, use these questions to really consider your core values. And to whittle the list down, ask yourself, what am I passionate about? What really taps my talent? What meets a significant need in the world? Where can I find purpose? Or what is my mission? Hiram W. Smith, he's the author of a great book that I encourage you to read. It's called Purposeful Retirement. He said, and I quote, "Plan to do what you love to do. When we act out of love, miracles happen." What do you love to do? If you don't know, if you can't figure it out, the consequences are severe. You'll do nothing. You'll sit, you'll be depressed, and you'll wait to die. So we need to make the most out of our retirement because you want to do what you love, right? Find new passions, pick up an old hobby, do what you want and what's going to be most important to you. What if you don't know what you're passionate about? That's okay. It's not that hard to figure out. Hiram Smith suggests that you can find out pretty easy by picturing an I-beam. And if you recall what an I-beam is for, it's vital in construction, right? Especially in large buildings like skyscrapers. They're normally made out of structural steel, so they're very strong. And though only 6 inches wide, these long beams can carry and support tremendous weight and are utilized to frame out buildings. So I want you to imagine a long I-beam, to picture it, about 300 feet long, or essentially the length of a football field. Now, if an I-beam was stretched out on the ground and I asked you to walk the length of it for $100, I think you'd probably make that walk. Wouldn't be too much to do that. If you fell, you'd be able to get on the ground pretty easily. You wouldn't get hurt. And if you made it across, you just earned $100, which isn't a bad reward for walking 300 feet. But what if we place that I-beam over the north rim of the Grand Canyon? Now, a single misstep would mean that you'd fall over 1,000 feet straight down. And even if I offered you $100, most of you probably wouldn't walk across that I-beam. I'm guessing that most of you would say, no thanks. and they'd scoff at me for making such an insane offer. But if you think of it on a hot, windy day, for example, and picture yourself on a hot, windy day, you're on one side of the canyon and you see maybe a beloved grandchild on the other side, alone, lost, in need of help. And the only way to reach your grandchild is to cross that I-beam, 6 inches wide, 300 feet across. Would you step onto the I-beam? Would you do everything you could to make it to the other side to help your grandchild? Now, if the answer comes back swiftly, yes, of course I would. You probably value family because you value that grandchild, and you'll take that step. By changing the reward, we may have found a governing value. And your governing values are your highest, deepest, most valued priorities in your life. These values are who you are, and they identify what makes you, you. If you understand your values and your inner self, you have unleashed a driving force in your own personal path to form a purposeful retirement. You know what you value, and therefore you know where you should direct your time, your energies, and your resources. So you can really determine what types of activities you'll participate in. And one good way to do that is to write it out. So for example, if one of your core values is family, well, you could write down that you'll spend time with your children, your grandchildren, maybe other family members. Or if you value growing intellectually or learning, take time to read or take classes at a local college or university. Maybe you value helping others. Look for opportunities to volunteer in some way. The bottom line is if you are planning activities around your core values, you will find more satisfaction in your retirement because you will find purpose in the activity. So taking that into consideration, what I want you to do right now is just take a couple of minutes, and I'm going to move over this chat feature here. I want you to take a couple minutes to write down what you'd like to do most in retirement. If money or time were no object, and what you can do to make it happen. I'm just going to turn on some music for just a moment and go ahead and fill in that chat if you'd like. What you most want to do in retirement. All right, wonderful. I love seeing all of these. These are wonderful, and I love Stephen not watching 49 hours of TV per week. That's great. But it looks like we've got some great things like playing a fiddle or teaching or, you know, teaching skiing, using your artistic abilities, traveling, spending time with grandkids. These are wonderful things, you guys. I love seeing this. Visiting extended family. Um, avoid traffic. Dean, that's great. Um, Even starting a business. I saw one individual that wanted to start a business. These are wonderful things and things that I think that each of you probably value in some way or another. And I want you to really think about how you're going to go about making that happen. And as we talk about this, about your activities, hopefully we can kind of help you understand how you might be able to develop these hobbies, or maybe work, or using those things, those activities, to really fill some of the time that you're going to be missing from working. So, as I mentioned, once you've identified your core values, you really can plan out your activities. In 2015, TIAA performed a study that showed that 76% of retirees who engaged in 10 or more activities per week reported being very satisfied with their retirement, compared with just 52% who engaged in 1 to 4 activities. There's so many different activities that you can choose from, right? But think about what you're going to do. Part of this is how we identify ourselves. We often, right now, identify ourselves with our job title. So filling that calendar or your time with various activities can be somewhat difficult, because you're having to transition from going to work every day to doing what you want every day. And that's why I think a lot of people may turn to television, because it's so easy. Because we're not a teacher any longer. We're not a police officer. We're not an engineer. We're not a social worker. Whatever your career might have been, we somewhat, in a way, lose that identity, and we have to identify ourselves in some other way. A retired colonel in the Army, Bob Euland, he said, "You cannot be so inflexible that what you do in your career is your only passion. Now that you're retired, you better find out who you are and what you want to do. You better find out what matters to you outside of your day job, and you better get to work doing it." So I would even go further, is to find out before retirement. He talks about now being retired, but I think you probably need to identify that before you go into retirement. So you need to retire with a plan, with a purpose, with a motivation to really make a difference. And one of the interesting things, I was at a conference a few weeks ago, talking about retirement, and in that conference, a statement really caught my attention. They said that people that retire with a plan in retirement, on average, live 7 years longer than those without a plan. So it's important really to think about what you're going to do. So imagine this is your retirement calendar. You need to fill 8 to 12 hours a day, Sunday through Saturday. And think about it this way too. What about the weekends, right? Well, every day is going to be a weekend. So what I'd encourage you to do is really look at all those extra time that you're going to have. Fill out a calendar. You don't need to include activities like shopping, cleaning, exercises, and those things, because you already have time to do those in your current calendar, in your current schedule. But look to fill that calendar out with anywhere from 56 to 84 hours a week, to fill that time. You can have some time to watch TV. Maybe it's a couple hours a day, but don't fill that time totally with just one activity. You really need to look at, like I mentioned earlier, doing 10 or more activities a week. And there is where you can really find satisfaction in retirement. So you can choose from several different types of activities. You can unretire. You can go back to work, even if it's part-time. Many retirees find working can be satisfying. And that can be going back to work as a consultant in the field you worked in during your career. Maybe it's buying a bed and breakfast, starting your own business, and enjoying working with customers or doing whatever you do. Perhaps it's going to work part-time just to continue to build meaningful relationships. You can volunteer at a school, a nonprofit organization, teach classes at a community center, help a neighbor. Develop your talents by getting that degree you always wanted, or take that art class. Maybe it's taking piano lessons, or as was mentioned, teach fiddle, right? Teach the fiddle. Develop your talents. Read, take classes, learn a new language. Take care of your brain. Write your personal history. Complete some family history or genealogy. Build your legacy by building relationships with your kids and grandkids. You can travel. Go on new adventures. If you don't like to travel, go to the museum. Make your backyard a place of refuge or your very own vacation spot. One of the big things that in my research that I've done is be fully present. Leave work behind. Do those things that will help you to be there for your family and friends. Put away the cell phone. Build those relationships. Do you have things that you always wanted to do? Like a bucket list? If not, think of those things that you're going to do in retirement. I love this quote by John Barrymore because I think it's important for us to look for ways to do things you've always wanted to do. He says, "A man is not old until regrets take the place of dreams." Don't let that happen. Don't become old, right? I still feel like I'm 18, even though I'm a few years older than that. But that's what we need to be able to do, is look at ways that we can have fun, right? One of the biggest things to consider is how you're going to share in the various activities you want to do. Relationships really matter. And this book here, Triumphs of Experience, is about a Harvard study of adult development that may be the longest study of adult life that's ever been done. They tracked the lives of 724 men for 75 years, year after year, asking about their work, their home lives, their health, and of course asking all along the way without knowing how their life stories were going to turn out. Through this study, they learned 3 big lessons about relationships, and I want to share those with you because I think this is probably where this is going to be key in understanding what you can do to really help make for an enjoyable retirement. The first lesson that was learned in this study is that social connections are really good for us and that loneliness kills. It turns out that there are more socially connected, that those who are more socially connected to family, to friends, to the community, they're happier, they're physically healthier, and they live longer than people who are less well connected. And the experience of loneliness actually turns out to be toxic. People who are more isolated than they want to be from others find that they are less happy, their health declines earlier in midlife, their brain functioning declines sooner, and they live shorter lives than people who are not lonely. And the sad fact is that any given time, more than 1 in 5 Americans will report that they're lonely. Now think about the interactions you have at work. You typically average maybe 22 high-quality interactions per week while you're working. You're around more people and may not suffer from loneliness. However, things change after you retire. On average, retirees have 11 low-quality interactions per week. And those low social interactions can be as bad for your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day, being an alcoholic, or never exercising, and twice as bad for your health as obesity. Having stronger social ties is linked to being better, to having better cognitive health in later life and the lower likelihood of developing dementia. So some important aspects of things that we really need to consider in this. One of the other things is that studies have shown is that you can actually be lonely in a crowd. You can be lonely in a marriage. So the second big lesson that we learned from this study is that it's not just the number of friends you have, and it's not whether or not you're in a committed relationship, but it's the quality of your close relationships that matter. It turns out that living in the midst of a conflict is really bad for our health. High conflict marriages, for example, without much affection, turn out to be very bad for our health, perhaps worse than getting divorced. And living in the midst of good, warm relationships is protective. New research tells us to babysit in moderation. Studies show that spending time with grandchildren keeps us young, at least young at heart. One of the other things, though, that another study showed is that doing it too much can actually be damaging. So moderation is important. Researchers from the Women's Health Aging Project in Australia actually did study this a little bit, and they studied the cognitive function of over 180 women who cared for their grandchildren. They found that the women who spent 1 day a week caring for their grandchildren had a lower risk of developing Alzheimer's, dementia, and other cognitive disorders. Also, a study performed by the Institute on Aging at Boston College studied 376 grandparents and 340 children for 19 years. The study found that the closer the relationship between the grandparent and the grandchild, the less likely either one was to develop depression. So this is a wonderful opportunity to really help find an enjoyable retirement. The third big lesson that we learned about relationships and our health is that good relationships don't just protect our bodies, they protect our brains. It turns out that being in a securely attached relationship to another person in your 80s is protective. That the people who are in relationships where they feel they can count on the other person in times of need, those people's memories stay sharper longer. And the people in relationships where they feel they really can't count on the other one, those are the people who experience earlier memory decline. And those good relationships, they don't have to be smooth all the time, but some of the octogenarian couples could bicker with each other day in and day out, but as long as they felt that they could really count on the other when the going got tough, those arguments didn't take a toll on their memories. The people in the 75-year study who were the happiest in retirement were the people who had actively worked to replace workmates with new playmates or retiremates. Other studies have discovered that as people age, they seek out situations that will lift their moods. For instance, pruning social circles of friends or acquaintances who might bring them down. The groups you associate with often determine the type of person you become. For people who want improved health, association with other people is usually the strongest and most direct path of change. Other studies have shown that it's important for those of you that are married to plan activities with your spouse, but also activities separate from your spouse. You need that time away. So it's important for you to look at that as well. The bottom line is you need to be able to take care of yourself. I love this study that was performed in 2014. The Journal of the American Medical Association published a 2.5-year study which concluded that if you want to age well, you need to walk. Scientists actually asked 1,635 individuals who were medically classified as sedentary, so people that weren't getting around much. They could walk 1 lap around a track, and that's it, or 400 meters in essence. The researchers divided these individuals into 2 groups, an education group and an exercise group. Now, the education group was asked to visit a research center about once a month to learn about nutrition and healthcare. The exercise group started a program of walking and weight training using ankle weights at home and at supervised tracks. They were asked to walk for 150 minutes per week and complete 30 minutes of weight training each week. In the end, the exercising volunteers were about 18% less likely to have experienced any episode of physical disability during the experience. Also, they were about 28% less likely to become persistently, possibly disabled. Researchers were surprised that the numbers didn't reflect a greater disparity. But when they started polling and talking to the education group, who was supposed to be the control, the education group, they found out, had actually started exercising because they were learning more about nutrition and the benefits of taking care of themselves. So had they not done so, the differences would probably have been more pronounced. So taking care of yourself through proper nutrition, exercise, staying positive can really help you enjoy your retirement more fully. Also, just to give you a reference point as well, PHP has some wonderful wellness resources available, as well as some medical supplement, Medicare supplement information that you might find useful in retirement as well. So there's a link there for you to utilize if you'd like to click on that. Now, of course, health in retirement is important. You really do need to take care of yourself. Edward Stanley gave a great quote. He said, "Those who think they have no time for bodily exercise will sooner or later have to find time for illness." So, the bottom line is you either take care of yourself or look for the time to be ill, be sick. Okay? So the bottom line is that you can really learn to love and create your own retirement masterpiece. Plan it out. Form those relationships. Engage in your retirement. As you do so, you're really going to find satisfaction and joy. I can promise you that. And only you can actually find that source of your happiness. Again, think of where you feel joy in your life right now. Where can you find it in retirement? What are you going to be doing to make it possible for you to be happy in retirement? One of the great benefits of finding that joy and happiness in retirement is that studies have shown that those that are happier feel better. They're healthier. You'll feel better. You won't have to go to the doctor as often. You'll be more mentally aware. The cognitive function and physical decline, or the cognitive and physical decline, won't happen as rapidly. So what does that mean for you? Think about that. Think about how you can be happy in your life. I love this quote by Sophia Loren. And this kind of puts everything into perspective as to what we've talked about. Talks about that ongoing relentless effort and creativity that we talked about right at the beginning. She says, "There is a fountain of youth. It is your mind, your talents, the creativity you bring to your life and the lives of people you love. When you learn to tap this source, you will truly have defeated age." So, remember that retirement is not just about finances. While it plays an important role in retirement, you have 6 other areas that can help you fulfill a purposeful, creative retirement. Think of your values and how they apply to each of these areas. What activities are you planning that fit into these categories? And how will you create those meaningful relationships? If you're retired right now, I know there may be some of you that are, it's not too late to think through these things. If you're not retired, it really isn't too early to begin planning. So how are you going to make your retirement masterpiece? Well, first of all, down at the bottom in the files, Kim mentioned it earlier, there is a worksheet or a handout that you can download. This is the Creating Your Retirement Questionnaire. And this questionnaire is a workbook that can help you and your spouse or your friends think through the activities, the relationships, your values, and how you'll be able to maintain a healthy lifestyle in retirement. Fill it out with a spouse or a loved one. The second thing is, and I'd encourage you to do that is to meet with a URS retirement planning advisor. Now, they're mostly going to be talking about the financial aspects of retirement. But they can talk through your personal plan, what you plan on doing. Maybe you're wanting to travel in retirement. That's going to cost some money. Think of that. And they can help you kind of understand how you might make that a little bit more beneficial. The third thing is that we have a great resource on the URS website now with several links to help you with your plan. We have links for volunteering, learning opportunities with the various colleges and universities throughout the state. There's some links for healthy aging and the senior centers throughout Utah. And also, we've included some links to healthcare in retirement, for healthcare in retirement. If you go click on the link www.urs.org/general/lifestyle, you can find that information. The bottom line is begin thinking about these things in your plan before retirement. Again, talk it through with your spouse. Do those things that you can do to plan now and to make your retirement purposeful. Really what it comes down to is you have to be creative to create your retirement masterpiece. Who knows? Your retirement years could be the best of your life. So with that, I appreciate your time, appreciate the comments.